Hey, what's going on everybody? Brandon Charleston here, recording another tutorial for you. In this video, we are going to discuss about AI, but we're not going to just talk about AIs and as they are, as large language models, as basically a brain. I have other videos for that, and there's definitely a lot of content. We can go more deep if it's requested on that, but essentially we're going to talk about AI agents. So with AI, obviously there's a lot of new models constantly rolling out. They just get bigger and bigger, better and better. The token API rates, seem to be going down. There's ever evolving large language models, right? So there's only so much use case you can do when you're interacting with an AI, model such as ChatGPT, Claude. And there's a number of them out there, Gemini. Really what you're doing is you're having a conversation. So in everyday life, it's no different than you and me just talking and not actually doing anything, right? So think of like you calling up somebody and just talking over the phone. There's really going to be no execution, right? So let me give you a scenario. Let's say you have a car, and let's say a check engine light comes on, or there's a problem with your car, right? What are you going to do? Well, if you're not a mechanic, you're going to probably call a mechanic, right? And just in this instance, and the reason you're going to call a mechanic is because he has the knowledge and the ability to diagnose or figure out what potentially is wrong with your car, right? So just like this in a large language model, you would find the resource that has the knowledge for it, right? And another scenario is a real estate agent, right? So when you're about to sell your house, you're usually the resource you're going to go to is somebody who lives in real estate or works in real estate, right? Not to get too far off here, but yeah, really what you're doing is you are using different resources with the knowledge in order to execute a said task. And so with AI agents, back to that mechanic scenario, essentially if you were to call and say, hey, I got this problem with my car, right? Like the engine is not running or a check engine light or whatever, right? You would then take it into the shop. And then what that mechanic would do is they have, number one, probably a manual, or at least they really know your vehicle, right? If they're going to execute on that job. And they also have tools. So they have wrenches, they have different, tools essentially to be able to take apart whatever is broken and replace that part, and then get your car back and going, right? So he has three things. He has the knowledge, what's up in his head, and then he has tools, and then he has any sort of resources or manuals like car, manuals as far as precision when it comes to building engines and things like that. Whatever manual he would need in order to reference that. So he's essentially an agent, if you think about it. He's a mechanic that is an agent in that. Really, the definition of an agent, if you really think about it, is to be able to figure it out, right? So if anything, real estate agent, they live in the real estate space, meaning they have the knowledge and they have the resources to figure out your solution, which is to either sell or purchase a home, right? That is what an agent is. And so back to that mechanic and even that real estate scenario, this in AI is exactly what it is. We are taking the brain, which what we've been doing is interacting with AI, just basically having a conversation, and now we're going to give it tools. We're going to give it direction to be able to do something, right? And so it's really important to really have foundational knowledge when it comes to use cases with different AI models. Because as I mentioned in previous videos, there's usually three models that come out every single time. It's usually a small, a medium, and a large of some sort. There's always different names and things like that, but the takeaway here is you really want to understand what's the size of the model, and there usually are parameters like some sort of B or depending on the parameters, but sometimes it's like a 70B or a 200B, which means billion parameters, and they just get bigger and bigger. But you want to pay attention to the number of parameters and if they self-identify, if you will, of a small, medium, or large model. So we're going to go over the anatomy and very basic 101 of how an agent actually works. I'm going to demonstrate some use cases and some experimentation that I've done using common tools that I talk about all the time, such as Clay and n8n. So we'll go over that. And then you'll be able to hopefully have a better understanding as far as how agents actually work, and then how you can actually train one and execute on certain things. We are literally at a point in our lives where you could ultimately make a decision in your business or use case when it comes to automating something, if you actually need to hire an employee, or if it's something that's just simply administrative and can be executed via agent or any sort of automated task. And so, really, we're separating the fact where it's either data exchange or some sort of task that needs to be executed where there's no human interaction or human logic or even emotion that needs to apply to that, such as sales. So really, we're at a point now where with these technologies in place that we can start to modify, give or take, that's why there's all the rage about, oh, AI's taking my job. And, that's a whole nother conversation. So anyway, let's go ahead and dive in. And then hopefully I don't make you go cross-eyed, because I know a lot of this stuff is very technical. So if you find yourself getting bored or cross-eyed, just leave a comment, tell me to dial it back a notch or two. I'm trying to make this as palatable as possible, so you get at least one or two nuggets, to take away. So be honest, I'm trying to keep it real, you know what I mean? We're all in this together and learning it, so just let me know. So that said, let's dive in. So I'm in a tool called n8n. This is very similar to Zapier and make.com. If you're not familiar with those, essentially what it does is automate tasks to where you can execute on said things. So very basic one is essentially if someone books a calendar invite or basically fills out a form on my website, something like that, automatically, what do you think happens on the back end? That form or some sort of trigger is happening as a matter of flow, and then basically you're setting an appointment or whatever the next step is being done automatically, or at least it should. That is the purpose of Zapier, Make, and then n8n. The reason I like n8n so much, for me anyway, is there's a couple options here. Number one, it's extremely versatile and extremely customizable. There's a little bit more of a technical curve behind it, but once you actually read the documents and everything, it's actually, in my opinion, not too bad. It's very palatable. Just keep watching my videos, subscribe, and hey, I'll keep it going. So n8n is really good. They have a lot of good documents and community. Their Discord is great. And so there's just a lot, it's an ever evolving thing. And so the second reason I really like it too is the ability to open source. It is open source. And so personally, I have self-hosted it on my own website via a server, and so there's documents even how to do that too. And if you'd like, I can record a video on how to actually self-host it by request. Leave a comment, please like this video, and let the algorithm know, and then we can make it happen. So but anyway, when you self-host it, really the rate limits are really not an issue. It comes down to compute time, which means costings goes down too. There's a lot of good platforms out there when it comes to Zapier and Make, and then also even running AI agents, which I'm about to demonstrate. But a lot of times the way those business models operate, there's nothing wrong with it. So don't shoot me if you're one of those guys. However, a lot of times they rate it based on credits or some sort of compute credit system, right? And so with tools that I use, such as Clay, it's either going to get really expensive or you're going to get throttled, or both is going to happen. And so this is a good use case to experiment a little bit more and not hit your pocketbook as much, right? And so with that, check out n8n. I do have an affiliate link. It's down in the comments. I'd really appreciate the support if you want to check it out, and if I just told you about it and you haven't signed up yet. So anything, and I really am grateful for that. So that said, poke around, sign up. So they have two versions. They have the cloud version, which obviously is subscription-based, which is just sign up and you're done. And then there's the self-host option, which again, if you want me to make a video on that, leave a comment and we can get that figured out and go from there. So that said, here are the documents, as I mentioned before. Definitely check it out. Not to get too off course here, but this is everything you need to know. They even have a beginner's course on how to really kind of understand what's available and how to even get started. Poke around on the templates, that kind of thing. And so that's all I'll say about that. And then here we are. So this is the anatomy of an AI agent, right? So what you do is when you're talking to ChatGPT or Claude or any sort of chatbot, or if you're in a tool like Clay where you are interacting with any sort of AI model, you are sending a prompt and then you're receiving an output, right? It's input output, and so that's basically what it comes down to: what you give in, and then what you're going to get back, right? It's processing tokens, or it's processing information in order to compute and give you the answer that you desire, right? Now back to that mechanic and that real estate agent. Now what we're doing is we're essentially arming it with a brain, right? So think of this like a robot or a person, right? The agent is a larger node, and then these are sub nodes. So there's going to be a trigger. So what all you got to do is we'll just duplicate one here real quick, and all you got to do is you just create a node. And then it'll set you up. All I did is just set it up. So even if I go right here and I say advanced AI, boom. And then there's AI templates, and then I could just select AI agent, and it's going to pop up a new agent. So no need to do that actually. But this is actually what you get. So you're going to have a trigger, and there's a number of different triggers. So you have, this one's just a chat trigger. So I can essentially bring up a chat window, and I could interact with it. No different than ChatGPT. This is exactly what it is. So, are you alive? We'll just say that. And it's going to reference the AI model that is tied to it, and it's going to respond, right? So it's going to say, are you connected to the internet? And it's going to say, no, I'm not, because it's not connected to the internet. I didn't give it any tools, right? I didn't give it a tool for the internet. So what we're going to do here is, and then the next thing too, not to get off course, and I don't want to lose you, that you might go cross-eyed on me, so hear me out. There are different types of agents that could be applicable to your use case. And so I encourage you to read the documents on its use case, but hear me out here. A lot of these are pretty self-explanatory. There's a tools agent, conversational agent, OpenAI functions, this is more function-based to OpenAI. This has a good use, but we're not going to focus on that. The two ones we're going to look at is tools agent and React. SQL, that basically references a database, so we're not going to get too advanced on that one. But the ones you want to really pay attention to is going to be React and then the tools agent. Really, this is you give me a prompt, yes sir, no sir, I have a tool, I have a hammer and a nail, and you need to select this tool to do this. Like it is a task-driven thing here where there's not a whole lot of logic or creativity or the temperature rather is to be said. It's just, I'm giving you this, do it. You know what I mean? And so that is what React is. It stands for reasoning and action. So it's going to reason and understand what you want to do, and then it's going to act on it, right? And so we tied a model to this, and so there's a number of different integrations here. So there's calculator, so that's a very simple one. And AI models are not good calculators, believe it or not, even though it's a computer. Don't ask it to do algebra or even like 2 + 2. Like it could hallucinate on that, seriously. So, but it has a calculator tool, and it's no different than you having one of those calculators. You doing it. You may have knowledge, and you may think about, 20,000 divided by 3 by a factor of 2. But you're probably in your head not going to be able to compute that as fast. So what you would do is you actually have a calculator. That is what this AI agent scenario is, right? I am an agent. My job is to figure out whatever, and then I'm going to use a calculator to figure it out in order to support your answer, right? So you would make an agent to do a calculator in this instance. You can do custom code tool. We won't get into that, but it's essentially JavaScript or Python that you can tie into that. This is actually a brand new feature, which we'll get into here in a second. But this is no different than your HTTP request for any sort of request that you want to make. It's kind of unique because you don't want to do just a simple HTTP request if that's the information you're looking for, because then you would ask, well, why do I need an agent to just do that? Why don't I just do that? But what you would do here is you would make an HTTP request, and then be able to process that and to give you the output. And so we'll explain here in a second. SERP API. So a SERP is essentially just going to Google. It's a search engine results page. It's just going to a Google search. This is just one provider. There's another one called serper.dev, which is, in my opinion, a whole lot cheaper. So yeah, check it out. This is integrated. It's basically doing a Google search is what it is. There's a good old Wikipedia, so you could tie this easily and be able to explore Wikipedia. Wolfram is more like library, computational intelligence. It's a whole library of things. And then this one is a bit more advanced, which we'll get to in just a little bit. But this is essentially your completely open world to tying in and designing your own tool, whatever that might be. It's essentially a whole nother workflow that you could process and send that and package that up as a tool. So think of it like a thingamajig tool to do whatever you just made to do that one job. And there's a number, like literally the world is your oyster, as what they would say. This is to execute. We'll show you a use case, and then we'll move on. So this is essentially it. So yeah, you do that. So I could even tie in Wikipedia, which I don't need to do on anything. But then all I got to do is just say, when is Taylor Swift's birthday? And it'll probably reference Wikipedia, just to really make sure it goes after that. And then we'll be done. So yeah, you can see here, look, so Anthropic chat model, it actually went to Wikipedia, query Taylor Swift. And then it went, I'm only bringing this up because my daughter is a Swiftie. So anyway, it's all good if you are too. But anyway, this brought up, so what this actually did is this agent, answered the following question, and it went through and it decided to use Wikipedia as a tool and reference that. And then it basically prompted it and then gave me the answer, right? So Wikipedia was its tool. So moving on, we are going to go into a little bit more complex workflow here. And so what I encourage you to do, this is the template that I use, which I'm about to demonstrate. And so it's an AI agent that can scrape web pages. So this is a really good template. I would definitely poke around with it, merge or ingest it into your workflow, and just poke around. And so this is exactly it right here. So what I did is I modified it a little bit here, and I'm still experimenting, so your experience and results may differ. I'm still trying to, that cutting edge kind of thing. It's never really consistent because we're always pushing the limits when it comes to AI, testing new things. But what I have been doing is I essentially took this entire model, and what it's doing is, well, firstly, it starts with a chat, right? So the trigger is, what it used to be is you just hit chat, and then you could type in a prompt just like I showed you, and then it'll process through everything here with the model, the tool, which actually this goes to an HTTP, or this actually executes another workflow. This is not quite a HTTP, even though it's confusing here. This is not the HTTP request, because what this actually does is executes this workflow, which what it's going to do is take this entire workflow right here. So all of this is one workflow inside this canvas, inside the workflow. So what happens is I type in something, it goes into the node here. It's going to reference one of the brains here to understand and make a decision, in which case it's going to process this where the information is executed here. So this is just a trigger to say, hey, start the workflow by the AI model, right? This is going to essentially clean up the data to basically pull, let's say I said in Clayagent, for example, visit the website of www.apple.com and do this and give me the offer and blah, 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 right? What this will actually do is this is going to take that data and it's going to grab the URL and then it's going to clean it up and parse the data, right? So it's removing the URL essentially to make sure it's correctly formatted to send it into a proper HTTP request. And then all this is a GET request, because really, if you think about it, your browser, your Chrome browser, your Safari, your whatever browser you're using, is actually just an API call. When you go to a website, you're doing a GET request, and then you are downloading all the code to your computer by the server of what you visually see to be rendered, so that way you can interact with the website. That is really what a browser is, right? And so this is what we're doing. We're doing a GET request for that exact website. Then what happens is this is going to do a check. Is basically if true, if false. Basically it's doing a check to see if we got an error message, in which it'll basically process that, and so make sure we're doing error handling there. So poke around, just understand how it works. But in most instances, it's going to extract the email body. So we're going to actually get all the code. It's going to extract the email body, and then from there we're going to remove extra tags, we're going to simplify it, and then it's going to essentially send it back to the workflow where the output, right? So what I did is I actually set this up and I changed the trigger. So I got rid of this chat trigger because I wanted to use it within a platform called Clay. And essentially it's a webhook. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this agent through an HTTP request, and we're just going to do a GET request. I just typed in the endpoint, and then I did a body. This is really all you need here. And then I did the open curly bracket. In any sort of JSON body, you have a key and then you have a value. So you put this in quotes, and then I put the AI prompt, which you can see right here. Visit the website of Tesla and tell me what kind of services they offer, right? That's all I said. And then this populated. So, but more to come. If you don't know how to use Clay, watch my Clay videos. There's also great resources online on their website. And so reach out if you have more questions on that. So that's essentially what this AI agent is to scrape websites, right? So what I have done, and this is where we can get really creative and real saucy. With Clay, as you know, their key agent is ClayGen. ClayGen really performs well in most instances, but you'll notice, I'm sure if you haven't already, but you'll notice it performs actually very differently when you tie in GPT 3.5, GPT-4, GPT-4o, and then also Claude. You'll notice that the different models you put with it, it actually processes it just a little differently, and sometimes your results are not consistent enough, especially at scale, right? So we're trying to identify inconsistencies and find a good model for our use case that is going to actually execute, right? So, by the way, there's no large language model that is really the bee's knees and end-all be-all, because it could change tomorrow. But consistently, what I have noticed is Claude consistently is doing well for me. And so for the sake of time, I usually go to Claude to use it for this particular use case. Now, there are still times where I'll use Cohere in order to do a little bit more research because that model is a little bit better and more consistent. It's a good sidekick, if you will, to that. But what I'm leaning more towards is actually programming more AI agents to where they are a said task. So they're essentially kind of a robot task, where they're going to execute on a particular thing versus any sort of hallucinating, things like that. So back to my original mechanic and real estate agent. These right here are different models. So we have Google Gemini, which right here, it's natively integrated, and you could select 1.5 Pro, which is the latest. And thing is, keep in mind that Gemini 1.5 Pro is actually a mid-size. Remember what I talked about. So they haven't quite yet released their large model. And then we have OpenAI. We have this other one I've been talking about as well called Grok. This is not the Grok that Elon came out with back on Twitter and RX. That's Grok. Grok is purely a hardware company. They don't provide, or as of yet, their own large language models. What they are is a hardware company where they produce what you call LPUs, which is language processing units. It's a newer technology where they can essentially reduce inference and process a hell of a lot faster. And so their big thing here is response time. And so they, of course, have Grok Cloud, in which they can host open source models such as Llama 3, Mistral, a number of different open models, right? So right here I have Meta's Llama 3 70B selected, right? And then we have Google Gemma, which is actually their open source, and then we have Mixtral, and then so these are the models here. But essentially, through Grok's Cloud API, I am able to run Meta, aka Facebook. They have a Llama 3, which is their LLM. So Grok has hosted that brain, that large language model, on their LPU servers for fast response times. So now I could actually use Grok and tie it to an agent and be able to work with it, right? So that's cool. I mean, that's some good stuff, right? Playing with toys, right? Shiny object syndrome. So, and then we have Anthropic, and then we have Mistral. Mistral, again, same thing. It's not talked about too often, but it's definitely a large language model you should pay attention to, because guess who has skin in the game in Mistral? Microsoft. So they haven't put all their eggs in OpenAI. They diversified a bit. So definitely look into Mistral. In fact, I like Mistral a lot, especially their new CodeStral LLM. So if you're getting deeper into programming, give it a whirl. So anyway, so what I did is I actually, you can see here, this model or this agent, I duplicated it and I tied this to Gemini. And then I have this one tied to Grok. And then I have this one tied to Mistral, right? So these are all the agents that are tied to Web Scraper, right? And then the trigger here is a webhook. And then what I did was I did some contrast and comparisons here. So all I did is I put a number of different company names, company domain, and that's it. And then I brought up Clagent with GPT-4o and Clagent with the new 3.5 Sonnet. So we go in here, and I did the exact same prompt. Visit the website of company domain and tell me what types of services they offer. Give me as much detail as possible. That's all I said. Same with this one. I just wanted to be fair game, and I selected Claude 3.5 Sonnet, right? So obviously they've prepared just fine. You know, gives you results. This one, same thing, gives you a good amount of results, right? But now let's look to see what Claude, which is essentially the same one as this, but then this gives you a good snapshot of how the agent actually works and what it's doing when you're trying to understand and troubleshoot, like, the result wasn't what I wanted, so what is happening here, right? What's going on in the back end? And so it's just no different than if you have an employee and you're like, dude, figure this crap out, you know, like, what are you doing, right? Let me help you fix it. So anyway, I ran Claude, and then like any API call, if you get 200, that's a good thing. That's what you get. So what you got to do is you just got to click in, and this is the result here. So you can see here, I got the whole shenanigans. I got everything, right? And I click on this, and I got the whole shenanigans. And then these are popular companies, but like my company, for example, Top of Funnel, where I do lead generation, AI automation, simple plug there. But it essentially did everything here. This is everything that's on my website. And then I also just pulled some random, because I didn't want to go, you know, you got big companies where everybody knows about it, but I also went for some startups just on Crunchbase. This is completely random, and then I went for Workday. And then you can see here, you know, Clagent performed on that. So anyway, moving on. Now you have Gemini, okay? So Gemini, this is an AI agent tied to Google Gemini's large language model, 1.5 Pro, which again is a mid-sized LLM. Traditionally, from my experience and based on what I see, agents generally perform better with larger models. You have to really, really hone on mid and small LLMs for the Clagent to execute properly, right? Think of it like this. If you're giving a 10-year-old a wrench and you ask them to do some sort of big task, they're probably going to screw it up. But I bet you if you go to your child who's 10 or less and you say, hey, go make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and you give them the bread, the peanut butter, and the jelly, they're probably going to make it just fine because that's a pretty simple task and you gave them very clear directions, right? I mean, they could mess that up, but that is the metaphoric example of what I'm getting at here, right? But generally speaking, when you do an AI agent, you're trying to do a complex task such as scrape a website and understand the whole code and everything and to give you what you want. You generally want to use a larger model and your results are probably going to be better, right? So not to get too long-winded here, this is Gemini, and you can see here there was a couple of instances where I'm still experimenting with it, but I wanted to get this video out just so I could show you. That way you could play around, and figure it out from there. And then I went into Grok, and Grok with Llama 3 also did a pretty fine job. There was a couple of scenarios where it didn't quite perform well, but the interesting part here is I ran this twice. And GPT-4o wasn't able to get this. So anyway, I digress. Grok output, same thing. I just talked about that. So I just need to, so again, with n8n, basically I'm sending a webhook from Clay via webhook to n8n, and it's running through this entire workflow and then coming back to me, right? So the way you would do this is you would set up a webhook, and then you do the production URL, and then, so what this does is it goes from webhook, it runs through here, it runs through all the brain power, and then this tool calls out this workflow, and then the finish, if you will, the output is respond to webhook, in which I get the response right here. So that is the workflow as far as information. And then I have Mistral. Again, Mistral agent. That's pretty dope. Let's be real here. So I used it again. It did pretty well. It wasn't too bad. I mean, it was very brief, but it's like pennies for tokens. And so I would probably use this for smaller tasks, things like that. But these are examples. So really, this is what you have to play with, right? And so I encourage you, to try it out. Poke around. You definitely have customization as far as what AI models you want to use. Now, here's the big question is, well, why should I use this if there's Relevance AI, you have Crew AI, you have a number of different new platforms that are AI agents, and you're right. Like, this probably could not be a good use to you, The biggest use case for me, again, is what I was saying in the beginning, where this is self-hosted, so I can just run an instance and I don't even think about credits or anything like that, right? All I'm worried about is API tokens, and that's usually obviously fractions of a cent in the million tokens, right? So really that's all I'm paying for is compute time, right? So because it's self-hosted. So you got to think about when you're setting a call, when you're in a platform called Clay, you're in a spreadsheet fashion where if you have a list of like 10,000 or 50,000 leads, that is like 10,000 or 50,000 calls that you're running, right? So two things. Again, it's going to hit your pocketbook, or it's going to bottleneck you on rate limits. And so Relevance AI and a lot of these platforms, generally speaking, if you're using a platform called like Clay, I keep saying called Clay. I've named it several times now. Get it together, Brandon. You want to really take that into account, right? So I guess I would just say all this, that try it out, click, check out n8n. And anyway, this video is already 30 minutes. I was hoping for a short one. So if you made it all the way this far, cheers to you. I appreciate it. I'm still deployed. It's 4th of July. Holy crap. And it's time to turn in for the night. So anyway, I appreciate you watching this. Please like and subscribe. And it really means a lot. And let me know what other video use cases that you would like. Happy to do the self-host and try to dumb that down. Hopefully you didn't go cross-eyed, and hopefully you got a couple nuggets out of this. But either way, cheers, and thanks again, and have a great rest of your day.